Legend of Total War here, and earlier today, Creative Assembly dropped the trailer for the next DLC, which is The Hunter and the Beast. We all pretty much correctly guessed based on the information provided yesterday, based on that, half of a poster, that the Empire Lord was going to be Markus Wulfhart. Now, it wasn't just Markus Wulfhart, we're also going to get a Lizardmen Lord as well, Nakai the Wanderer, who I've never heard of before, but I'm sure I'll read up a bit about it and learn about what he's about. Anyway, let's watch the trailer first. I'll analyze a few of the things at the end of the trailer, and then there's a bunch of other things I want to discuss, because this was sort of like information overload that came in today. There's a lot of stuff happening for Total War Warhammer 2, and a lot of it's really exciting. But anyway, let's watch the trailer first, which I'll link in the description if you don't want to necessarily watch right now. And I'll link all of the references that I'm using here, and you can watch it all in your own time, or read it in your own time. Anyway, let's move on. Watch this.
Taking them so long? Have a little faith.
Okay, so that's the trailer. Again, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch it yourself. Haven't already seen it. Anyway, so we got Markus Wulfhart here, who's the Empire Hunts Marshal, and we've got Nakai the Warrior. Nakai the Wanderer, who is a Kroxigor general. So this one here is going to be the weirdest thing. But anyway, let's cover the Empire stuff first. So going back over here. Now, it seems like the new units that the Empire are going to get are going to mainly be... Hang on, let me just find it. Mainly be focused on archers, but also on, like, mobile artillery. So these carriages here, there's, I think, two types. They've got, like, the carriage mortars and the carriage Hellblaster volley guns. And it's just essentially mobile artillery. Now, I think the big downside to it, apart from being, the big downside is going to be that there's going to be fewer guns. So in a normal unit, you've got four mortars or 4 Hellblaster volley guns. But in a carriage one, you'll only have 1. Now, here's the big thing. On smaller unit scales, this is not going to scale very well. So it's going to be way more powerful on small unit scale than it will be on large unit scale, if I'm correct about these things. So that'll be interesting to see how they manage to balance that. So if it's on small unit scale, it definitely should only have like a quarter of the amount of ammunition that it does on huge unit scale, because otherwise it'll be completely overpowered. Hopefully they've thought about that, because that doesn't matter so much in single player, I guess, but it would certainly matter in multiplayer. Anyway, there's going to be a whole bunch of archer units, which it'd be interesting to see if they're long-range archers or just the same range as crossbowmen. If they function exactly the same as crossbowmen, you got to wonder what's the point. So they've got to have some sort of edge. They're probably going to be less armor-piercing, but longer range, more along the lines of what the sort of high elf archers are. I don't know if they'll go the full 180 range like high elf archers, but we won't know until we actually see some gameplay footage. And then we've got, Markus Wulfhart here. Now, this dude is going to be available both in the Mortal Empires campaign and also the Vortex. So this is the first time that the Empire is going to be present in that particular campaign. Now, I don't know exactly where he's going to show up in the Mortal Empires campaign, But in the Vortex campaign, he's going to be settled somewhere in Lustria. He's not going to be a horde faction, so he'll have settlements, he'll build them up and build up his army and so on and so forth. Now, I don't believe he'll be able to get Karl Franz, Balthazar Gelt, and Volkmar the Grim in the Vortex campaign. Instead, what he's able to do is something similar to what the Vampire Coast does, and hires various other heroes that he can have support on. Now, the funny thing is those heroes are from other races. There's like a Wood Elf one, a Dwarf Engineer, and so on and so forth, you know, of the Forces of Order. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this mix and match faction works. But on Mortal Empires, I believe that Markus Wulfhart isn't actually going to be in Lustria. He might actually be situated, to begin with, in the Drakvold forest, in the actual empire itself, close to Middenland. I don't know if that's the case for sure, but that seems to make sense, because technically, from the lore-wise, that's sort of where he's supposed to be. It kind of makes sense for him to go on an adventure in the Vortex campaign, but for Mortal Empires, he really should be present within the Empire itself. Now, there's a whole bunch of other changes coming to the Empire as well. Balthazar Gelt is getting his own faction of Solland, which I think is going to be south of Wissenland. It's sort of like the most south province of the Empire. There's going to be a couple of new regions in the Empire, mostly situated in the west and south of the Empire. And the officers mechanic is going to be completely removed and replaced with an Elector count mechanic, which they teased a little bit over Twitter, and it looks really good. So now it's sort of like a government system, where you put your governors down, except only for the Empire provinces, where you can actually put an Elector count to govern a particular province of the Empire. I don't know exactly how it's going to function, but it looks a hell of a lot better than the quite bland officers tree. So officers tree is out, Elector count mechanic in. What that's going to mean, we'll have to wait and see. Now, Lizardmen. It's arguably even more information, more stuff is coming out for the Lizardmen, which is really unexpected, because the Lizardmen just got a DLC. You know, they just got, and an FLC. They got Tic-Tac-Toe and Tehenowin in the latest DLC. Now, I would say in the latest DLC, prior to this one, the Lizardmen sort of got a little bit gypped. The Skaven, even though they didn't get as many legendary lords, they got way better units and way better mechanics than the Lizardmen did. And that might have something to do with why they're getting another one here. I personally thought that it was actually going to be the Empire and Dark Elves. I mentioned it in one of my other videos that I thought that Malice Darkblade was going to be the next DLC. So that was wrong. I mean, it was just a pure guess anyway. But I wouldn't have thought they'd do the same race twice in a DLC in a row. Don't have a problem with it though, because Lizardmen's one of my favorite races. Anyway, in terms of details about the actual Lizardman dude, so there's one extra lord coming in as part of the DLC pack, but for those of you who don't purchase this, you can still get the FLC lord, Gor-Rok. So you'll still get it, if you want, another legendary lord. So 2 new legendary lords coming for the Lizardmen, bringing their total count to 6. 6 playable legendary lords on both the Vortex and Mortal Empires. Now, the main point of distinction here is that this guy here, Nakai the Wanderer, he's not a settled faction. He functions as a horde. So they're sort of completely overhauling the horde mechanic for this dude. And I don't know how it's exactly going to function. But again, it'll be in the blog post, which I should probably bring up. Let me just grab it here. So this one here, I'll leave a link to this in the description, but it's going to be hopefully a much more in-depth horde mechanic than, say, the Beastmen and Chaos mechanics have been. And this could actually be a really good testing ground for how they're going to handle the Warriors of Chaos in Game 3, which is due to come out, at least due to be announced fairly soon. So they should be very much working on it. And looking at the units that they have available, there's a whole bunch of Kroxigor type ones, which makes sense. The previous DLC was largely focused on Skinks, and this one we're getting like 2 different types of new Kroxigors, so I'll be interested to see how they function. But the big one that drew my interest because, you know, I'm the cheese master, is this motherfucker here. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I'll learn all their names eventually. But this creature here is going to be apparently the biggest entity in Total War Warhammer 2 so far. It's going to be bigger than a mammoth, and currently mammoths are the biggest creatures on in Total War Warhammer at the moment. Now that, I don't know how that's going to function in terms of the gameplay, because in the campaign, what you can do with mammoths is their stats don't seem overly remarkable at first, but what the thing is, when you blob them together, what they do is they cause massive amounts of disruption. This is why mammoth spam doomstacks, hippogriff doomstacks, stegodon doomstacks, why they work so well. Their individual stats don't seem like they're that high, but because they affect so many other units around them when they're pushing their weight around, they just hit a lot of units. Now, this one here is going to be even bigger than the mammoth, so it'll be interesting to see how much damage this guy can do, and whether it's actually going to be overpowered. Now, it could also be a fact of just be super, super slow, sort of like a giant, and maybe not actually do as much splash damage, or maybe do heaps of splash damage, but just be really slow. Who knows? But I'll be interested to see if this will replace the Stegodon Doomstack, which is currently like the strongest, in my opinion, campaign stack to have as the Lizardmen. Lizardmen is one of my favorite factions, so it's good to see so many extra new units for them. But again, one of the big problems with the Lizardmen is they actually have a hard time juggling their buildings. They've got way more tier 4 buildings than a lot of other factions, and you just sort of can't fit everything that you need in their provinces. So are these units going to be fit into the existing building tree, or are there going to be new buildings with higher tiers added for the Lizardmen settlements? It's not really going to apply too much, I suppose, to Nakai the Wanderer, but I'm assuming that these units will be able to be recruited from, say, Hexawaddle and Last Defenders. Anyway, that's a bit of food for thought. Whole bunch of information coming out for Warhammer 2 for this content. It seems like it's going to be quite a lot. So I'm actually really excited to play this DLC, and when I do get to play it, you know, when it comes out on the 11th of September, my plan is to begin with Markus Wulfhart, because I recently did a Lizardmen campaign and want to give them a little bit more of a break. And then shortly after covering him I'll probably do the Vortex campaign first. Then I'll cover the Lizardmen, maybe the Nakai the Wanderer, but on Mortal Empires. We'll see, because I prefer the Mortal Empires map, personally. But anyway, that's what my plans are going forward. I'll adjust them as information gets added. But anyway, cool new DLC, hopefully coming out. Hopefully it's good. But we won't know until it comes out. Anyway, that's all the information that I think you need to get from me. Read the blog if you want. If you don't, you don't have to. Anyway, that's the end of this one, and I'll see you next time, fuckers.